You'll understand when you're older, my mom said after choosing a 5-star resort trip for my sister. I didn't argue. I just left the key on the table and vanished before they got back. I've been lurking on this subreddit for months, reading everyone's stories about standing up to toxic family members. I never thought I'd be posting my own, but here we are. This happened about a year ago, and I'm finally ready to share the whole mess. My name is Jennifer. I'm 24, and up until recently, I lived with my mom, Denise, 52, and my younger sister, Amber, 19. Dad passed away when I was 16, and since then, it's been the three of us in our family home in suburban Cleveland. Well, it was supposed to be our home. Let me paint you a picture of how things worked in the Martinez household. Amber was the golden child from day one. Mom always had excuses. She's younger. She's more sensitive. She needs more support. Meanwhile, I was expected to be the responsible one, the one who didn't need anything, the one who should just be grateful for what I had when Amber wanted to quit her part-time job at the local coffee shop because her manager was mean to her. Mom supported her decision and increased her allowance. When I asked if I could use some of my college fund to study abroad junior year, money doesn't grow on trees, Jennifer. Be practical. Amber got a brand new Honda Civic for her 18th birthday. I got a used bike for mine and was told to be thankful I had transportation at all. Amber's friends were always welcome to stay over, order pizza, make noise until 2 o'clock a.m. When my college friends visited, Mom would complain about the disruption and ask them to leave by 10 p.m. But the real kicker, after Dad died, he left the house to all three of us equally. Mom had the larger share as his spouse, but Amber and I each inherited portions as well. We all owned it together, though Mom managed all the household finances and decisions. Mom always promised that when she was gone, Amber and I would inherit equally. "It's only fair," she'd say. "This house belongs to all of us." I graduated college with a degree in marketing and landed a job as a marketing assistant at a mid-sized firm downtown. I was making $45,000 a year, which wasn't amazing, but it was enough to contribute to household expenses and start building some savings. I offered to pay rent multiple times, but Mom always refused. "This is your home, honey. Family doesn't pay rent." Amber, on the other hand, dropped out of community college after one semester, claiming it wasn't for her. She'd had about 8 different jobs in 2 years, usually quitting within a month or two because of some drama with coworkers or customers. Mom never pressured her to contribute financially. "She's figuring herself out," was the constant refrain. The situation that finally broke me started in February. Amber had been dating this guy Chase for about 6 months. He was fine, I guess, but Amber was completely obsessed with him. She talked about him constantly, posted about their relationship on social media every day, and basically made him her entire personality. One day in early March, Amber burst into the living room where Mom and I were watching TV, practically vibrating with excitement. "Chase proposed," she squealed, waving a small diamond ring around. "We're engaged." I'll admit, my first thought was that they were way too young and hadn't been together nearly long enough to make that decision. But I congratulated her and asked about their plans. That's when things got interesting. "We want to have a destination wedding," Amber announced. "Somewhere tropical and beautiful. Chase has been looking at resorts in the Bahamas." Mom immediately started gushing about how romantic and wonderful that sounded. I asked the practical question. "How are you planning to pay for that? Those kinds of weddings are expensive." Amber's face fell a little. "Well, we were hoping. Since Dad always said he wanted to walk me down the aisle someday." She looked at Mom with puppy dog eyes. Mom's expression softened completely. "Of course, sweetheart, we'll figure something out. This is your special day." Over the next few weeks, Amber researched venues obsessively. She settled on this incredible resort in Nassau that cost $15,000 just for the wedding package, not including flights, accommodation, or any extras. For a family of 3 plus Chase's parents, we were looking at close to $30,000 total. I tried to be supportive, I really did. But when Amber started talking about flying first class and upgrading to Ocean View suites, I had to say something. "Jess, maybe we should look at some more budget-friendly options. There are beautiful places that don't cost quite so much." She looked at me like I'd suggested getting married at a gas station. "Jennifer, this is my dream wedding. I've been planning this my whole life. You've been engaged for 3 weeks. You're just jealous because no one wants to marry you." That stung, but I let it go. Amber had always been dramatic. The real problem became clear when Mom sat me down for a family meeting in late March. She'd been crunching numbers, she said, and the wedding was going to require some creative financing. They'd set the date for September 15th, giving us 6 months to plan and save. "I've been thinking about the house," she said carefully. "You know, property values have gone up a lot in the past few years. If we took out a home equity loan, we could easily cover Amber's wedding costs." "I've been thinking about the house," she said carefully. "You know, property values have gone up a lot in the past few years. If we took out a home equity loan, we could easily cover Amber's wedding costs." I stared at her. "You want to mortgage the house for a wedding?" "It's not just any wedding, Jennifer. It's Amber's dream wedding, and it's not like we'd be spending the money frivolously. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event." "Mom, what if something happens to your income? What if you can't make the payments? We could lose the house." "Don't be so negative. My job is stable and you're contributing now too. We can handle the monthly payments." I tried to explain that taking on that much debt for a party seemed incredibly risky, especially when Amber and Chase had no savings and inconsistent employment. Mom accused me of being unsupportive and jealous, but I agreed to think about it. What choice did I have? It was 2 against 1, and Mom managed the house finances. A few weeks later in April, Mom approached me again. She'd been to the bank and gotten pre-approved for a $35,000 home equity loan. The monthly payments would be about $400, which she was confident we could manage between her salary and my contribution to household expenses. "There's just one small thing," she said. "Since you and Amber are both on the deed as co-owners, the bank needs all 3 of us to sign the loan documents." My stomach dropped. "Mom, I really don't feel comfortable with this." "Jennifer, please. This is for your sister's happiness. Don't you want Amber to have the wedding she's always dreamed of?" I asked for more time to think, but the pressure was constant. Amber would make comments about how I was the only thing standing between her and her perfect day. Mom would sigh dramatically whenever wedding planning came up, mentioning how disappointed Amber was that we couldn't move forward. Finally, in early May, I caved. I signed the loan documents, and Mom immediately started transferring money to cover Amber's wedding expenses. The date was set for September 15th, just 4 months away. Almost immediately, the spending spiraled out of control. Amber decided she needed a new wardrobe for the trip. She booked spa treatments and excursions that weren't part of the original package. She insisted on having a rehearsal dinner at the resort's most expensive restaurant. When I brought up amounting costs, Mom told me not to worry about it. "We'll figure it out. This is Amber's time." 2 weeks before the wedding, Amber announced that she'd invited 6 additional friends to join the celebration. "The more the merrier," she said cheerfully. I did the math. With the extra guests, upgraded accommodations, and all the add-ons Amber kept requesting, we were looking at close to $50,000 in total expenses. Our $35,000 loan wasn't going to cover it. "How are we paying for the rest?" I asked Mom. "I've been thinking about that," she said. "I could take some cash advances on my credit cards to cover the difference, maybe $8,000 or so." I felt sick. "Mom, that's insane. The interest rates on cash advances are like 25%. We'll never be able to pay that back." "Jennifer, sometimes you have to take risks for the people you love. Amber deserves this." I tried one more time to reason with them. I suggested scaling back on some of the extras, maybe reducing the guest list or finding ways to cut costs without ruining Amber's vision. Both of them acted like I was trying to destroy Amber's happiness out of pure spite. "You'll understand when you're older," Mom said dismissively. "Right now, you're focused on money, but family is what really matters. Someday, you'll want your family to make sacrifices for your happiness too." That phrase echoed in my head for days. "You'll understand when you're older." I was 24 years old, college educated, employed, and contributing to the household. But apparently, I was too young and immature to have a valid opinion about taking on crippling debt for a party. The final straw came 1 week before the wedding. I came home from work to find Amber and Mom surrounded by shopping bags in the living room. Amber was showing off a designer dress she bought for the rehearsal dinner. "It was $800, but it's Valentino," she gushed. "I'll probably never own anything this nice again." I lost it. "Amber, we're already $15,000 over budget for this wedding. Why are you still spending money we don't have?" "God, Jennifer, you're so obsessed with money. It's just a dress." It's an $800 dress that we're paying for with credit card debt. Amber's voice turned cold. This is my wedding. If you don't want to be supportive, maybe you shouldn't come. I looked at Mom, waiting for her to say something, anything, to acknowledge how unreasonable this had become. Instead, she sighed and said, Jennifer, I know you're stressed about the finances, but can't you just be happy for your sister? This is the most important day of her life. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Mom had said. You'll understand when you're older. The condescension in her voice, the dismissal of my very reasonable concerns, the assumption that I was just too immature to understand the importance of family. I thought about my dad, who'd always treated me like an intelligent person whose opinions mattered. He never would have mortgaged our home for a wedding. He definitely wouldn't have dismissed my concerns with patronizing comments about age and maturity. And I thought about the house. Dad had left it to all three of us equally. Mom always talked about how it would be mine and Amber's someday, how it was our security, our inheritance. Now she was willing to risk losing it for a party. That's when I made my decision. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day researching real estate lawyers and property law. What I learned was very interesting. Since Amber and I were both on the deed as equal co-owners with Mom, any of us had the right to petition the court for a partition sale. Essentially, if the co-owners of a property couldn't agree on how to manage it, the court could order it to be sold and the proceeds divided according to ownership percentages. It was a nuclear option, and it would probably destroy my relationship with my family. But I was looking at years of debt payments on loans I never wanted. Also, Amber could have her perfect princess moment. I spent the weekend talking to lawyers. The process would take several months, but it was definitely possible. The house was worth about $320,000, according to recent comparable sales. There was still about $180,000 left on the original mortgage, plus the new $35,000 home equity loan. After paying those off and legal fees, we'd be looking at roughly $95,000 left to split three ways. My share would be approximately $30,000. Not a fortune, but enough for a decent apartment deposit and some breathing room. But I wasn't quite ready to go nuclear. I decided to try one last conversation with Mom. Monday evening, I asked her to sit down with me privately. I explained my concerns about the debt we were taking on, the risk to our home, and the pattern of financial irresponsibility that this wedding represented. Mom, I love Amber, and I want her to be happy, but we're mortgaging our future for one day. What happens if you lose your job? What happens if the house needs major repairs? We'll have no equity left and $50,000 in high-interest debt. Mom listened, but I could see in her eyes that she'd already made up her mind. Jennifer, I understand you're worried, but sometimes in life you have to take leaps of faith for the people you love. Amber has had a hard time finding her way, and this wedding represents a new beginning for her. I'm not going to let financial anxiety rob her of this moment. What about my future? What about my security? You're young and smart and capable. You'll figure it out. Amber needs more support right now. There it was. The same old dynamic that had defined our family since Dad died. Amber's needs always came first. My concerns were always secondary. What if I said I wanted to sell the house? I asked quietly. Mom's face went white. What? What if I said I didn't want to be part of this anymore? What if I wanted to cash out my share and start over somewhere else? Jennifer, you can't be serious. This is our family home. Your father wanted us to stay together. Dad wanted us to take care of each other. He didn't want us to go bankrupt throwing parties. We argued for another hour, but it was clear that Mom wasn't going to budge. Amber's wedding was happening regardless of the financial consequences, and I was expected to go along with it because family loyalty trumped everything else. That night, I called the lawyer I consulted with earlier and told him I wanted to move forward with a partition action. He explained that I would need to have the other parties formally served with legal papers. Leaving documents on a kitchen table wouldn't be legally sufficient. The next morning, Tuesday, August 5th, exactly 6 weeks before Amber's wedding, I filed the legal paperwork to force the sale of our family home. I arranged for a process server to deliver the papers to Mom and Amber the following Monday, August 12th, which would give them a full month before the wedding to process the situation. I didn't tell Mom and Amber immediately about the lawsuit. They were leaving Thursday, September 12th for the Bahamas, and I wanted to give myself time to figure out my next steps before the inevitable explosion. The process server would deliver the papers on Monday, August 12th, giving them a full month to deal with the legal situation before their wedding. Wednesday evening, September 11th, I packed 2 suitcases with my most important belongings and loaded them into my car. I found a short-term rental apartment across town and put down a deposit. I arranged to take a week of vacation time from work, effective immediately. Thursday morning, I waited until Mom and Amber left for the airport. Amber was practically bouncing with excitement, talking nonstop about how perfect everything was going to be. Mom seemed stressed about all the last-minute details, but happy to see Amber so happy. They barely acknowledged my goodbye. I was staying behind to hold down the fort and would see them when they got back on Monday. After their Uber pulled away, I went back into the house one last time. I walked through all the rooms, remembering Dad teaching me to ride a bike in the driveway, helping me with homework at the kitchen table, reading bedtime stories in my childhood bedroom. I was going to miss this place, but it hadn't felt like home in a long time. I left a sealed envelope on the kitchen table with Mom's name on it. Inside was a copy of the partition lawsuit papers and a brief note. Mom, I tried to talk to you about my concerns, but you made it clear that Amber's wants are more important than our family's financial security. Since you're determined to risk the house for her wedding, I've decided to claim my share now rather than wait for the inevitable foreclosure. You should have received the official court papers last month. My lawyer's contact information is included. I'll be staying somewhere else while this gets sorted out. I hope Amber's wedding is everything she dreamed of. Jennifer. I also left my house key on the table next to the envelope. Then I drove to my new apartment and waited. They got back Monday evening, September 16th, around 8:00 p.m. I was watching Netflix when my phone started blowing up. The first call came from Amber at 8:47 p.m. I let it go to voicemail. The message was mostly screaming and crying about how I was a jealous, vindictive who had ruined the best week of her life. The second call came from Mom at 9:15 p.m., also went to voicemail. This message was calmer, but somehow more devastating. She said she was disappointed beyond words and couldn't understand how I could be so cruel and selfish. She demanded I call her back immediately to explain myself. Over the next 3 hours, I received 47 phone calls, 32 text messages, and God knows how many voicemails. Both Mom and Amber cycled through anger, bargaining, and guilt tripping. Some highlights from Amber. I can't believe you would do this to me during the happiest time of my life. Mom is crying, and it's all your fault. From Mom. Your father would be ashamed of you. How could you attack your own family like this? From Amber again. Chase's parents think we're white trash now because of this lawsuit thing. You've humiliated me. From Mom. If you think you can blackmail us into giving you money, you're wrong. We'll fight this. I didn't respond to any of them. What was the point? I tried having reasonable conversations for months, and they dismissed me every time. Tuesday morning, I got a call from my lawyer, Tom Rodriguez. Mom had called his office and left some very angry messages. She seems to think you can just drop the lawsuit if you want to, he said. I explained that it doesn't work that way once the paperwork is filed, but she didn't seem to understand. How long will this take? I asked. Probably 4 to 6 months, assuming they don't contest it. If they fight it, could be longer. What are the chances they'll fight it? Honestly, low. The law is pretty clear on partition rights. Fighting it would just cost them legal fees they apparently can't afford. That afternoon, Amber showed up at my office. Security called me to say I had a visitor who was causing a disturbance in the lobby. I went downstairs to find Amber crying and making a scene in front of the reception desk. Jennifer, please, she said when she saw me. You have to stop this. Mom can't sleep. She's talking about taking out more loans to fight the lawsuit. I walked her outside where we could talk privately. Jess, I tried to discuss this with you guys for months. You wouldn't listen. But I just got married. This was supposed to be the happiest time of my life, and now everything is ruined. How was your wedding? The question seemed to catch her off guard. It was beautiful. Perfect. Actually, the resort was incredible, and the ceremony was like a fairy tale. I'm glad. I really am. I wanted you to have a nice wedding. Then why are you doing this? I tried to explain one more time about the debt and the financial risk and the pattern of favoritism that had led to this point. Amber listened, but I could tell she wasn't really hearing me. I don't understand why you're so obsessed with money, she said finally. It's just money. We're family. And that's when I realized that we'd probably never understand each other. To Amber, money was just something that appeared when she needed it, and the consequences of overspending were someone else's problem. To me, money represented security, independence, and the ability to make choices about my own life. I'm not obsessed with money, I told her. I just don't want to spend the next 10 years paying off debt for your party. It wasn't just a party, it was my wedding. A wedding is one day. The debt would have lasted a decade. She left without saying goodbye. The next few weeks were rough. Mom and Amber kept trying different tactics to get me to drop the lawsuit. Mom offered to refinance the house and take my name off all the loans if I would just call off the legal action. Amber wrote me a long letter about family loyalty and forgiveness. When emotional manipulation didn't work, they tried turning other people against me. Mom called my aunts and uncles to tell them I was tearing the family apart over money. Amber posted vague social media messages about being betrayed by someone she trusted. Some of our extended family reached out to me, mostly to express confusion about what was happening. When I explained the situation, most of them were actually pretty supportive. My dad's brother, Uncle Mike, said he thought I was being smart to protect my financial future. Your dad always worried about your mom's spending, he told me over coffee one afternoon. He used to say Denise was too generous for her own good, especially when it came to Amber. That was news to me, but it made sense in retrospect. The partition case moved forward steadily. Mom and Amber hired a lawyer to represent them, but as Tom had predicted, there wasn't much they could do to stop the process. The court ordered an appraisal of the property and scheduled a hearing to approve the sale. During this time, I had to deal with fallout in ways I hadn't anticipated. Word had spread through our neighborhood about the lawsuit, and I started getting sympathetic but nosy questions from neighbors when I went back to collect more of my belongings. Mrs. Patterson from next door cornered me one afternoon as I was loading boxes into my car. Jennifer, honey, I heard about what's happening with the house, she said, lowering her voice conspiratorially. I just want you to know that your father would be proud of you for standing up for yourself. That comment hit harder than I expected. I'd been second-guessing myself constantly, wondering if Dad really would approve of me forcing the sale of our family home, but Mrs. Patterson had known our family for 15 years. She'd watched Amber grow up, getting everything handed to her while I worked for every opportunity. Your mother means well, she continued, but that girl of hers has been spoiled rotten since your daddy passed. Someone needed to put a stop to it eventually. At work, I threw myself into my projects with renewed focus. Having my own place and knowing I was building toward actual financial independence gave me energy I hadn't felt in years. My boss, Margaret, noticed the change and pulled me aside during our monthly one-on-one meeting. I don't know what's going on in your personal life, but whatever it is seems to be agreeing with you, she said. Your work has been exceptional these past few months. I've been thinking about promoting you to Senior Marketing Coordinator. The promotion came with an $8,000 salary increase, which felt like the universe telling me I'd made the right choice. I was finally being recognized for my contributions, instead of being treated like an ATM for other people's dreams. Meanwhile, the drama at home was escalating in ways I heard about through the family grapevine. My cousin Maria called me in early August to fill me in on what she'd heard from her mother, who'd talked to Mom. Apparently, Amber's been having panic attacks about the house situation, Maria told me. She's convinced that everyone in town is talking about their financial problems, and she's embarrassed to leave the house. I felt a pang of sympathy, but then Maria continued. The weird part is, she's still posting on Instagram about how perfect her wedding was and showing off all the expensive stuff she bought for the honeymoon. Like, girl, maybe don't flaunt the designer handbags if you're trying to get sympathy for your money problems. That was so typically Amber. She wanted to have her cake and eat it too, to be seen as both the victim of my cruel lawsuit and the glamorous newlywed living her best life. The real eye-opener came when I ran into Chase's mother, Patricia, at the grocery store in mid-August. I'd only met her a few times before the wedding, but she recognized me and approached cautiously. Jennifer, I hope you don't mind me asking, but is everything all right with your family? Chase mentioned there were some legal issues with your house. I gave her a brief diplomatic explanation about the partition lawsuit, focusing on the financial disagreement rather than the family drama. Patricia listened with an increasingly concerned expression. Oh my, she said when I finished. Chase didn't tell us the full situation. We just thought you were having some kind of family dispute about the wedding expenses. What did Amber tell you? Patricia looked uncomfortable. Well, she said you were jealous about not being the center of attention and that you were trying to ruin her marriage by causing financial stress. She made it sound like you were being vindictive over something petty. Of course she had. I wasn't entirely surprised, but it still stung to know that Amber was spreading that version of events to Chase's family. The truth is, I told Patricia carefully, I was concerned about the amount of debt being taken on for the wedding. When I tried to discuss alternatives, I was told I was too young to understand family priorities. I felt my only option was to protect my own financial interests. Patricia nodded slowly. I have to admit, Chase's father and I were shocked at how expensive everything was. We offered to contribute, but Amber insisted everything had to be exactly as she planned it, regardless of cost. We ended up spending twice what we budgeted just to keep up. This was news to me. I hadn't realized that Chase's parents had also been pressured into overspending for Amber's vision. Between you and me, Patricia continued, Chase has been stressed about money ever since they got back from the honeymoon. Amber keeps talking about buying a house and starting a family right away, but they can barely afford their current apartment with all the wedding debt they're carrying. After that conversation, I felt more confident than ever that I'd made the right choice. It wasn't just about protecting myself from debt. It was about refusing to enable a pattern of financial irresponsibility that was hurting everyone around Amber, including her new husband. The court-ordered appraisal happened in late October. The appraiser spent about 2 hours at the house measuring rooms and taking photos. I wasn't there, but Mom called me afterward to tell me the preliminary value was $315,000, which was close to what I'd estimated months earlier. The lawyer says we should expect the final sale to happen sometime in December or January, she said. Her voice was flat, resigned. Amber keeps asking if there's any way to stop it, but he's been very clear that there isn't. How is she doing? I asked, surprising myself with the question. Not well. She's been having a lot of anxiety about the whole situation. She keeps saying this wasn't how her first year of marriage was supposed to go. I wanted to point out that her first year of marriage could have gone very differently if she hadn't insisted on a wedding that cost more than most people's annual salary. But there was no point in saying that to Mom. Around the same time, I started getting pressure from unexpected sources. My father's sister, Aunt Carol, called me one evening to discuss the situation. Jennifer, I know you feel hurt by your mother's decisions, she began. But don't you think you're taking this too far? Your father loved that house. It's where you grew up. Forcing your mother and sister to sell it seems so final. I explained my reasoning, but Aunt Carol kept pushing. Couldn't you work out some kind of payment plan? Maybe Amber could pay you back over time. With what money, Aunt Carol? She doesn't have a steady job, and she just took on massive debt for her wedding. Well, what about when she starts working full-time, or when she and Chase get more established? The conversation went in circles for 20 minutes. Finally, I realized what was really bothering Aunt Carol. Are you worried about what this looks like for the family? I asked. There was a pause. Well, yes, frankly. People are talking, Jennifer. They're saying you're being vindictive and money-hungry. It doesn't reflect well on any of us. There it was. The real issue wasn't my financial security or family relationships. It was the family's reputation in the community. I'm sorry you're embarrassed, I told her, but I'm not going to stay in debt for the rest of my life to protect the family image. That conversation made me realize how many people expected me to just quietly absorb the financial consequences of Amber's choices to avoid making waves. The idea that I might prioritize my own well-being over family harmony was apparently scandalous to some relatives, but other family members were more supportive. Dad's brother Mike called me a few days after my conversation with Aunt Carol. I heard Carol gave you grief about the house situation, he said. I wanted you to know that not everyone in the family thinks you're wrong. Thanks, Uncle Mike. That means a lot. Your dad always worried that your mother would spoil Amber to the point where it would hurt her in the long run. He used to say that Amber needed to learn how to handle disappointment and make compromises, or she'd never be able to function as an adult. This was the second time someone had mentioned Dad's concerns about Amber's upbringing. I wish he was still around to help navigate this mess, but I was starting to understand that he might have supported my decision. By early September, the stress was taking a visible toll on everyone involved. I heard from Maria that Mom had been calling in sick to work more frequently, and Amber had been staying in her pajamas most days, obsessively reading online forums about family financial disputes. The irony was that if Amber had put half as much energy into finding steady employment as she was putting into researching ways to blame me for their problems, she probably could have started making a dent in their debt. In November, about 3 months after I'd filed the lawsuit, Mom called me from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Jennifer?" Her voice was quiet, defeated. "Can we talk?" We met at a coffee shop downtown. Mom looked exhausted. She'd lost weight, and there were dark circles under her eyes. "The lawyer says we can't stop the sale," she said without preamble. "I know. The house will probably sell for around $315,000. After paying off both mortgages and the legal fees, we're looking at about $90,000 left to split 3 ways." I did the math in my head. That meant I'd get about $30,000, which was exactly what I calculated months earlier. "That's not enough for us to buy another house in this area," Mom continued. "Not with Amber's student loans and the wedding debt. We'll have to move somewhere cheaper, probably rent for a while." I felt the stab of guilt, but I pushed it down. "I'm sorry it worked out this way." Are you really sorry, Jennifer?" The question hung in the air between us. Was I sorry? I was sorry that it had come to this. I was sorry that our family had imploded. I was sorry that Dad wasn't around to help us navigate this mess. But was I sorry that I'd stood up for myself? That I'd refused to let them mortgage my future for Amber's fantasy wedding? No, I wasn't sorry about that. "I'm sorry we couldn't find a better solution," I said finally. Mom nodded slowly. "I know you think I always favored Amber. Maybe I did. She just seemed to need more support, more encouragement. You were always so capable, so independent." "I would have been fine," I said quietly, "but that doesn't mean I should have to sacrifice my financial security for Amber's wants." "You're right." The admission seemed to cost her something. I got caught up in wanting to give her the perfect wedding. I didn't think about the long-term consequences. We talked for another hour. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was the first honest conversation we'd had in years. Mom admitted that the wedding expenses had gotten completely out of control, and she'd been too embarrassed to admit she was in over her head. "What about Amber?" I asked. Mom's face tightened. "Amber is having a hard time accepting responsibility for any of this. She still thinks you did this to hurt her personally. And you? Do you think I did this to hurt you?" Mom considered the question carefully. "I think you did this to protect yourself. I don't like your methods, but I understand your reasons." The house sold in January for $318,000. After all the fees and loan payoffs, I received a check for $31,200. I used it as a down payment on a small condo closer to downtown, and I finally felt like I was building something that belonged to me. Mom and Amber ended up moving to a rental house about 30 minutes outside the city, where the cost of living was lower. Mom had to take on a second part-time job to manage their expenses, and Amber finally got serious about finding steady employment. I haven't talked to Amber since that day at my office. She's blocked me on all social media, and she refuses to be in the same place as me at family gatherings. According to other relatives, she and Chase are doing okay, but the financial stress of the wedding debt has been hard on their marriage. Mom and I have slowly started rebuilding our relationship. We have lunch about once a month, and while things aren't the same as they used to be, they're more honest. She's admitted that she enabled Amber for years, and that the wedding situation was the culmination of a lot of bad financial decisions. A few weeks ago, Amber had a baby. Mom sent me pictures, and I felt a complicated mix of emotions. I'm an aunt now, but I've never met my nephew, and I probably won't anytime soon. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing. Could I have found a way to solve the problem without destroying my family? Should I have just sucked it up and accepted the debt for the sake of keeping everyone together? But then I think about where I am now. I own my own home. I have no debt except my mortgage. I'm building a life based on my own choices and priorities. I have a relationship with my mom that's based on mutual respect rather than guilt and obligation. Amber got her dream wedding, but at the cost of financial stability and family relationships. Mom learned some hard lessons about enabling and financial responsibility. And I learned that sometimes protecting yourself requires making choices that other people will never understand or forgive. Would I do it again? Honestly, yes. I tried every other approach first. I attempted to reason with them, to compromise, to find alternatives. They dismissed my concerns and patronized me at every turn. When Mom told me, "You'll understand when you're older," she was really saying that my thoughts and feelings didn't matter, that I was too young and inexperienced to have valid opinions about my own life and financial future. Turns out I understood perfectly well. I understood that I was being asked to sacrifice my security for someone else's wants. I understood that my family saw me as a resource to be used rather than a person to be respected. And I understood that sometimes the only way to get people to take you seriously is to show them that their actions have consequences. The key I left on the table wasn't just a house key, it was a symbol of everything I was walking away from: the dysfunction, the favoritism, the financial irresponsibility, and the expectation that I would always be the one to sacrifice for everyone else's happiness. I don't regret leaving it behind.